morning, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you all for coming. I want to talk tonight about a topic that has many sides to it, that is controversial to say the least, affects many different people in different ways, and it certainly is not going away anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
So the analogy I want to start with, if any of us have ever had, let's say, a partner or maybe someone we're close with, ask to see our cell phone, our devices, maybe because they suspect unfaithfulness or infidelity or anything like that, and they don't ask you directly, okay, I want to go peruse through your phone and see your messages. They say, okay, maybe can I see your phone? I want to, save my number in it or something like that. But the entire time they actually have a motivation to do something different. Again, they don't directly reveal that from the outset, but that's what they're thinking, and that's their motivation for doing it to begin with. So I'm not here tonight to discuss cell phones or infidelity or anything like that. What I'm actually here to discuss is the topic of pretextual stops by law enforcement and the police.
Mm-hmm.
And my position with pretextual stops is that they should be banned. They should be ended. The practice should be ended, whether it's on a local, state, or even a national, federal level. And I'll go over my reasons why. So what are pretextual stops? Pretextual stops are encounters that the police have with the general public. It typically involves a motorist, but it can also be someone not in a vehicle. And the police, they stop this individual for, let's say, a minor traffic violation, failure to use a turn signal, maybe a broken tail light, failure to signal 100 feet before an intersection, things like that.
Uh-huh.
And so while that's the actual violation, which actually happened, it is a violation of the traffic code, that's not what the true intent of the stop is. The true intent of the stop is that the police can have basically a starting or a jumping off point and then have that to further their investigation into something hopefully more criminal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what a pretextual stop is. It's a mundane reason for the police encountering someone and then using that to escalate the situation into something else. So what about the origins of pretextual stops? So there really isn't one time period or era or date even for the origin of pretextual stops. It's a practice that has been around actually for a very long time in one form or another. Anything from Jim Crow to the days of slavery, throughout the civil rights movement, and it's still in practice today. You think back maybe to the times of Jim Crow, more applicable to my parents, where, let's say, someone drank from the wrong drinking fountain, mm-hmm. and the police would encounter them in that way. Or maybe someone was in a neighborhood that they didn't belong in, and the police stopped them and would say, hey, what are you doing here? We go back to things like vagrancy laws and loitering. This is all sort of the same basic concept of a pretext, using something minor to hopefully discover or go on a fishing expedition, if you will, to discover something else. So a little bit of the legal framework and how pretextual stops work. We have to go back to two Supreme Court decisions that happened here in the U.S. The first one was Wren versus Terry v. Ohio, which happened in 1963, and the second being U.S. v. Wren, which happened in 1996. Both of these incidents involved individuals who were, on one case, in the Terry v. Ohio case, the individual was in an area that was known to have high crime activity, so in the wrong place at the wrong time. The police stopped them because supposedly there was a robbery reported near, and that's all they had to go off. And so they saw an individual near, stopped this individual. As it turned out, this individual had an illegal firearm on him that wasn't registered, and the police arrested him and charged him with that. When this person took their case to court, they were convicted. However, they appealed, saying that because they didn't have anything to do with the actual incident that took place, their Fourth Amendment rights had been violated. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court did not side with the individual. The Supreme Court sided with the police, and that individual was convicted. In Wren v. U.S., it was similar to that. except that this one actually involved motorists who, the police involved this motorist being stopped at a light for quite some time, and then turned, or not a light, a stop sign, and then turned without signaling, and then sped off. Then the police eventually caught up to him with the initial intention that we stopped you for the traffic violation, and then when the police actually approached the driver's side window, they could see that there was contraband drugs in sight, and so they arrested them for that. And so these are these two cases really that the U.S. Supreme Court heard and affirmed that even if the police stop you for what is, let's say, a minor violation and they discover other things, it is not a violation of our Fourth Amendment rights, which protect us against unreasonable search and seizure. Mm-hmm. These are legal practices, even though they may not be moral or ethical. And so that's sort of the legal standing that pretextual stops have. So what about the effects of pretextual stops? Well, as we know from our rates of incarceration, our arrest records, police logs, pretextual stops disproportionately affect people of color and minority individuals. We know this for a fact. We've seen this, like I said, from our arrest records, from our incarceration rates, and this is something that affects not only these individuals, it affects their families, it affects us as a community as a whole. And rather than actually have the intended effect of what we wanted pretextual stops to do, which is to reduce guns on the street, reduce violence, reduce robberies, it's actually had the opposite effect. I'd like to actually read a quote, which was by the Los Angeles Police Commission president. His name is William Briggs. And he said, and I quote, "Pretextual stops do not result in guns being taken off the streets. These pretextual stops do not result in reducing murders, reducing shootings, and there is no data that anyone can point to that establishes that pretextual stops curtail violent crime in our city. In fact, the data shows the opposite." So this one I want to show some, for this portion I was going to show an actual video that I had of an encounter with the police, but this actually just came out yesterday. This report was released on April 27, 2022. And this report is by the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. And the title is Investigation into the City of Minneapolis Police Department, Findings from the Minnesota Department of Human Rights. And now this report is 72 pages long, so I won't go through all of it, but I'll just give sort of a brief synopsis of it. This report covered anything from practices of the Minneapolis Police Department, and in particular with the focus on racial profiling. What do we mean when we say racial profiling? Racial profiling in the sense of targeting certain areas, certain individuals, and going more aggressively trying to charge these individuals with crimes than with the rest of the general public. And the report found that the Minneapolis Police Department, the officers are more likely to stop vehicles with people of color and indigenous individuals when officers are more likely to identify the race and or ethnicity of a vehicle's occupants. The same report also found that Minneapolis Police Department treat black and white individuals differently during traffic stops. The same report also found that Minneapolis police officers are more likely to search black individuals and or their vehicles during a traffic stop than white individuals in similar circumstances. So like I said, I won't go through the entire report, but this report was made public. If anyone would like to access it, I can definitely leave a copy. And this same report can also be found on the Minnesota Department of Human Rights website.
On the website, okay.
Absolutely. So, in conclusion, what is the end game? You know, how does this affect me? How does it affect you? What can be done? How can we get involved? Well, each of us not only has the right, we have the responsibility to ensure fairness and equitable treatment of all of us. It's up to us to become informed on the topic of police encounters with people of different demographics. We never know, it could be you one day. In addition, we can take action by attending and speaking up to our city council and our mayor's offices, urging them to enact policies that put an end to practices like these. Write your congressman, write your senator, and urge them to pass legislation that would ban these practices, even if only at the state or local level. In addition, when we have our local elections, we have to remember that positions like the sheriff, the county attorney, these are all elected positions. Ask these individuals, what are their positions on felon disenfranchisement, restorative justice, and pretextual stops, and hold them accountable for their actions and policies. Thank you very much.
Very well. Well stated, well stated, I enjoyed that.
Any questions or anything that you have over there, or anything that,
Well, I'd say I learned a few things,
yeah,
which is beneficial for listening to it.
absolutely, absolutely.
You know, I know the stop sign on a minor scale, but, you know, it's happened to me, you know.
Right.
You know, like following somebody, you know, gives me directions, then I end up going through red lights and,
Sure.
you know, stop and,
Sure. I think,
in a lot of cases, you know, being my age,
sure,
they have a tendency to be more,
a bit more lenient.
yeah.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I think there's something to being a senior that they have to be a little more lenient. I've noticed that.
Right.
Because, you know, I've been pulled over for a few things.
Right.
But I can understand their scale of, you know, how they determine
Yeah.
their actions by, you know, different
Right.
scales of, you know, different types of people, you know.
Sure.
I can understand how.
Absolutely, and the thing is that, you know, like the quote I mentioned earlier, and that was, the gentleman, he's the president of the Los Angeles Police Department Commission, second largest police force in this country.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that these types of stops, you know, patrolling more heavily in, let's say, maybe lower income or, you know, minority or even majority black or indigenous colored neighborhoods, it has not had the intended effect. The idea behind this is that, okay, if we can sort of make these pretextual stops, then it'll help us to not only uncover greater crimes if they're taking place, but to reduce that.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, it's had the opposite effect. And it's long overdue that we take time to go a different route, because if something hasn't worked for the last 3 or 4 decades, then it's certainly time to try something new. So.
Is that commissioner in Los Angeles, is he currently serving right now, or?
I believe so.
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah, because they had a few people before him, and I think he came on in 2018.
Oh, he did? Okay.
He's
Yeah.
still there.
So he's still serving his term right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right. Okay.
Okay,
Thank
well,
you very much.
my pleasure, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Nice meeting you.
I really appreciate it.
I enjoyed the talk.